I've had two interesting items arrive in the mail this week. Yesterday we received this photo from eBay, and a few days before that a box which I'll come back to a little bit later. But anyway, let's start off with a look at this picture. It was advertised as 1934 Hong Kong waterfront harbour view, original photo from album. Certainly is a picture of the seafront. So take a closer look. Over on the right here we've got a rather damaged looking pier. You can see it's missing several planks. Then we've got a group of smaller boats, and then over on the left there's a larger junk. So the junks would be the seagoing ships. They'd go out into the deep waters. And the boats, the small boats here, these tended to stay in the Hong Kong waters, and these were houses, floating houses. You can see the families on board have got their washing out. Must be a good drying day. Lots of clothes hanging out on the poles here to dry. Life on board these little boats was a bit of a gamble. Hong Kong is known for its typhoons, and every few years we get a very strong one. And if you lived on one of these, well, if you were in a sheltered bay, you'd probably be all right. But if you happened to be in one that faced the wind and the waves, lots of the ships were lost and lots of lives were lost as well. So as a step towards solving that problem, in 1884, a large typhoon shelter was built in Causeway Bay. And it worked very well. But in the big typhoon of 1908, for example, there were still lots of boats destroyed because they just couldn't reach the shelter in time. And so a second large shelter was built off the shore at Yau Ma Tei. Looking at the background here, this is clearly Hong Kong Island. So we are looking at the typhoon shelter in Causeway Bay here. This is the sort of embankment, the wall that defends or shelters the boats that are in the shelter area here. And when this picture was taken, it was 50 years old. I don't think there were any celebrations, which is a shame really, because this probably saved hundreds of lives over those previous 50 years. On the day this picture was taken, the shelter is pretty much empty. See one large boat here, a few Western style launches along here. There are a few other boats in the shelter. You can see their masts sticking up here, but not many. At other times it'd be absolutely jam-packed. Obviously just before a typhoon arrived, but I've also seen a postcard showing it at Chinese New Year, and at that time it looks as though you could just about walk across from one side to the other, just across all the boats. In the background there's a road running along here. You can just see the trees on it. So this was the old Causeway Road. This is the road that gives the bay its name. Today the Central Library is sort of just around here off that road. A couple of landmark buildings. You can see one here with a long white building. This was part of the Kennedy stables. It actually surrounds a large courtyard. A big rectangular building. 1934, really coming to the end of the era of horsepower, so its days were numbered. And above that you can just about see a sort of a dome roof here, and this is Christ the King Chapel. So these large buildings here, originally this was all a big cotton mill. After the cotton mill closed, the nuns stepped in and bought the area, and they opened their hospital, St. Paul's Hospital, their school, and they built the chapel here as well. A little bit further away in the distance you can see this ridge running across the photo, and it divides Causeway Bay and Caroline Hill on this side, and then on the other side is Happy Valley. And this section of the ridge we know as Leighton Hill, You can just make out a couple of flat lines here. These are the roofs of the Leighton Hill government quarters that we saw from the other side, from the Happy Valley side a couple of weeks back. This is the dip. This is where Link Road runs across. And then, if you can just make out here, this is an access road built up on top of concrete stilts, leading up to this very grand large mansion that was built up here. After the war, a change of use, and this becomes the Pui Kiu School, one of the many communist schools that were opened in Hong Kong in the 1940s and 50s. That school has since moved away to another location. Their site's been redeveloped, and you'll find the Beverly Hill housing estate here today. And finally, our last landmark is this white building here. Perhaps you can just make out it's got towers on the corner, which gave it its name, the Towers. It was a large house built by the Warren family. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put links to all of these different items in the description below. You can click on those to find out more and see more photos. So this was a happy purchase. This is the sort of photo that I love to find. It's a viewpoint I haven't seen before, and lots of detail to explore in the photo. Right, what about the other box then? So this is more interesting. This comes from Jo, who got in touch after seeing one of the videos a couple of weeks back. And she wrote to me by email, "I have an old photograph my father must have acquired in Hong Kong. It's a long panorama of the city from the harbour with handwritten notes on the back identifying the different buildings, etc. The photo is dated November 4th, 1909. It's not in great shape. The paper is stiff and fragile, torn and cracked, and tightly rolled into 4 separate pieces." So quite exciting. This is a photo I'm really looking forward to seeing. But as Jo says, it has been tightly rolled up for many years, decades in fact. The paper has dried out. It's become very hard, very brittle. So if I try and unroll it now and show it to you, I'm likely to crack the paper. So we need to do a little bit of preparation first, and that will be the subject of the next video. So that wraps up this week's video. Thank you very much for watching.